Hello, everybody. Welcome. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Nancy Spicciarini, and I am honored to be part of the ECIS family. And we are here on behalf of the Women in Education SIG, who I'm going to be introducing. And tonight we are looking at leadership. We're looking at advice. Thank you for sharing some advice in the chat. We're starting off already, getting a positive mindset. So thank you for being here. I do want to introduce, we do have Cam with us. So Cam, give a big shout, our CEO. We just love her to death. So a big shout. And we have an event, which I'll be sharing with you soon. Cam is also doing an event for Women in Education. And we also have Sarah here as well, Head of Professional Learning. So thank you for being here, Sarah. So let's get right into it. We had some advice, and I wanted to share with you some of the advice. We have done this event in 2 time zones because we have so many member schools. We want to ensure that we meet the needs of those schools that might be living in Vietnam or Singapore. And then we also have this event. And I did want to, and we're going to share the chat. The link to this is in the chat. And everything is pink. So just some advice that our last cohort, we had also a good 30 to 40 people as well thinking about leadership. And the best is we raise by lifting others. The idea, be empathetic to others, put yourself in other shoes. So if you ever need some inspiration, please bookmark this Padlet for you. And it's just a way of starting off on a positive mindset. I would like to introduce the ECIS Women in Education SIG group. There are 6 of us ranging from different experiences and different cultures, and that's what really creates, I always refer to it, we're like a tapestry. We're different textures and fabrics, and we're woven together for a common goal and really promoting women in education. I'm not sure if any of the members are here. Is Erin? I think I saw Erin or Pauline are coming. So is anybody here? I can't see. We have quite a few.
Pauline's here, I think.
Pauline, give a shout out, Pauline.
Hi, everybody. Welcome.
We love Pauline. Also, she did an event recently for Middle Leadership on behalf of Women in Education. I will put the recording. Did we record it? We didn't record it, but I have the slide deck of your resources that I will share with you. She was brilliant. And what we do is constantly just trying to reach our international school community. When I think about our next event, this is where I did mention Cam. It is going to be International Women's Day in March. We celebrate it, and we are thrilled that both Cam and Liz Free, they are hosting an hour event looking at how do you create gender equitable organizations and approaches. So really sign up. I'm going to put that link in, or go to ECIS events calendar and you will find a link. So please join. Cam and Liz, who are just fabulous. And this again is another way to celebrate who we are within the international school community. When I think about why we're here, the first thing is about building community. And I always refer to that as the heart. So if you see somebody in your breakout, or even somebody right now, I see some good friends like Connie and Michael and Claire. I might just say, Claire, can we meet after this? I just want to connect with you. So do that intentionality to reach out. The head comes from the idea that I'm going to be posing some questions to Tonia and Kathleen, and those conceptual understandings are really those provocations. And then the hands is, what are you taking away from this session? So how are we engaging? Use the chat, social media, LinkedIn, Instagram, exchange email addresses. For the big group, please be on mute, but we're going to have a session where at the end you can unmute and ask your questions. And when we have our 10-minute breakout session, please ensure we have equal voice, the idea that everyone has the time to share. And now I would like both our guests. Now, I just want to say, when I asked both Tonia and Kathleen, they said yes immediately. How privileged I felt that they would spend their time. So Tonia, would you mind sharing a little bit about yourself? And also, can we first do a virtual round of applause for Tonia? Yay!
Thank you so much, Nancy. So my name's Tonia Whyte Potter-Mäl, and I'm delighted to have been invited to join you all today. I'm a Canadian who has lived overseas for the past 20 years with almost 25 years of experience in IB schools. And I've had different leadership roles for the past 14 years. And I feel really privileged to still love the profession after all this time. Currently, I'm the head of primary at International School Hannover Region in Germany.
Fabulous. Thank you for sharing that. And now, Kathleen, please, a few words.
Thank you as well for inviting me tonight, Nancy. So this is my 33rd year in education, and I've been a head of school for 12 years. I'm currently the head of school at the International School of Helsinki, and I started a long time ago in rural areas of New Mexico, and yeah, still loving what I'm doing, and it's all about kids to me still.
No, thank you so much. And now let's talk about how we're going to proceed with both our wonderful guests. We're going to be looking at 3 topics. We're going to start with school culture. We're going to move to professional development or advancement. And really, we're going to end with conflict management. And we're going to have one breakout room, which is a biggie. And we're going to use the 4A protocol. From listening to Tonia and Kathleen, pick one. What do you agree with? What do you argue with? What do you aspire to, or what assumptions do you feel have been made? And you have 10 minutes with 3 to 4 in a group. And if you do have time, you can add another A. So think of that now as those provocations of when you are going into your breakout room, that you actually have something prepared of what you might say. So this is when I love this part. I get to stop share. And I get to see everybody. Oh my goodness, Melanie and Elka and Karine, I love this. I have to do another slide around. Oh, Karine, oh my God, Melanie, oh my goodness, I love seeing everybody. Thank you, Vicky. Hi, Vicky. Okay, I know, Nancy, get control, bring it in. All right, we're gonna start with school culture. Kathleen, I'm gonna start with you. And my question is, what advice would you give to your younger self about fostering a positive and inclusive school culture? So please.
Thank you. Thank you. And, you know, it's an interesting question. And I think that when I first entered into leadership, I had very little understanding what either of those terms meant in terms of my leadership practice. So I want to first note that it's a learning journey when you're in leadership, and the things that you think are important in the beginning are often not the things that are important later on. When I think about school culture now, I think it is one of the most important aspects of my work. Most evidence shows that the head of school or the leadership are the ones who are actually setting the culture, and it's often through conscious and unconscious signaling that we do as leaders. And so when I think about setting culture now, and especially wanting to fostering a positive and inclusive culture, I have to be very aware of those who are in the room with me. And I need to focus on them in a way, and focus on the community, and wonder very early on how they are entering into this atmosphere. And is it signaling to them a sense of belonging from the first moment they walk into the room, and as they stay in our school? And how do I help create that at first with the right signals, and how do I keep that through that I mean that through maybe building of trust in a way? So some examples of that are, I'm very conscious of hierarchies in a room. How do I welcome people into a space? And this can just like be physicality of like, you know, I can be at a doorway, and as they're entering into space, you know, stopping and saying hello, like greeting people. You know, it sounds ridiculous, but like, hey, how you doing? Oh, I'm glad you're here. Good to see you. Haven't seen you. This sort of signaling. There's signaling that I do in the beginning of the school year. My first meeting at the school year with my staff, and a lot of new staff this year. The first thing I do is I introduce my pronouns, which are she and her, and that sends a very loud signal to the queer folks possibly in the room. It sends a signal of maybe perceived values that I might have. So I think it's important for leadership to understand the barriers for those who are entering into that space. Have you reduced barriers? And these can be physical barriers, these can be mental barriers, these can be barriers of, are they, when they enter into the room, do they obviously stand out based on their dress or their skin color? And like, do they suddenly feel like, oh, overwhelmed by what's happening? And how am I reaching out to everyone in the room in a way that feels welcoming? So I didn't understand any of this as a young leader, and I hope I'm doing a better job at it now.
Well, just sharing that advice, that intentionality, that it doesn't just happen. And I think that's the first step with many when talking about that sense of inclusion. Tonia, what would you say as your advice in terms of that sense of inclusion and sense of belonging within a school culture?
I found that over the years as a leader, one of the things that I've trained myself to do is to remember that the day doesn't start for staff, students, and their families at the school gate, nor does it end at the end of the day when they leave the school gate. And so that has been very humbling for me, I found over the years, because culture is about people, and it's not getting tasks done and achieving goals is really important, but at the end of the day, it's about people and who we are and how we connect with each other. And when we're able to see more of the whole person, I think it heightens our sense of intentionality. It heightens our sense of understanding and empathy, and it helps us to realize that we need to pay attention to more than just the person we see show up at work. There's a whole story behind what you see in front of you. So that has been quite powerful for me in terms of learning over the years. I would also say that I think when a school is a great school, it can sometimes be easier to think that you've arrived in terms of inclusion, in terms of belonging. And through my experience, I've learned that sometimes it's harder for great schools to go to the next level. And so it's really important that any school that, any community that feels they have arrived is probably missing a pretty important piece, because unless every single member of the community feels included and feels like they belong, then there's still a lot of arduous work to be done to achieve that goal. And it's more of a journey than an endpoint in my experience.
Oh, I love that intentionality again and that journey. But I'm going to take it a step further now. We talk about the sense of belonging, and I'm going to maybe say something people will disagree with, but it's really the students ensuring they're number one, they're our priority. That's why we're there. It's student learning. So within your experience, then how do you incorporate student voice into this culture? That sense of belonging, because we know once they feel like they have that sense of belonging, about the positive mindset, the improvement in student learning. So how do you navigate that intentionality? Because one thing I know from, I have Kathleen continue that, it's not just being in student council. A lot of schools say, oh, we have a student council, we're incorporating student voice. How do you bring it another level that you've learned from your experience that perhaps you didn't do 20, 10, 30 years ago? Kathleen, you want to start, please?
I think I've always had a really great relationship with students, and if anything, that's my strength, and maybe my weakness is with adults. But with students, I taught high school students, and my specialty for many years were those students who were considered at risk, which was a term from many years ago, and I believe that when you're speaking to students in a way that you are immediately showing this respect for them as young people, they see that, and then they're more open to tell you what they're worried about, what their problem is. So I do believe firmly in having structures that build this into your school. So for example, you know, when we're doing hiring, we have students who join in the interview process. So there's like these like very distinct practical things you can do. But I think in terms of leadership is like, how do you talk to kids says a lot about you as an adult. And, you know, if it's this kind of sickly sweet talking down to children that we often see, and it really kind of is an exposed power, you know, it's like, oh, honey, and this is like, I am looking down at you. You don't really have a voice. It's just like this very, maybe lacking in substance in conversation versus you seeing this person as somebody that you can learn from. And my greatest lessons have been from students and their experience. And so to me, again, having structures that the students are with you also in your office or wherever you are located. I always say when a student comes into my room, I'm treating them like an honored guest. I often will offer them tea, or if they, you know, there's some snacks or something like this. It's signaling even to, you know, a 4-year-old that I'm this welcoming presence, and I am excited to get to know them, and that I really want to deeply listen to their thoughts. This is their school, and I want their experience to feel so incredibly warm and rewarding.
I do want to add, Kathleen, I think I remember meeting with Rachel, that you actually have regular meetings with the leadership team, and occasionally you have, I'm not sure, even with board, that's actually embedded within your structures.
Yes. So we have a group called the SVC, Student Voice Commission. We have regular board meetings with them, and where we're acting as we're not guiding the process, they are guiding the process, and we're there to listen and figure out how we can help support some of their aspirations.
Wonderful. Great takeaways already, thinking about how many of you, if you were going to say hands up, have scheduled that's embedded within your meeting schedule, students with the leadership team. How many have that? Okay, I see Anna. Everyone else has this face like, ooh, that might be a good idea. Takeaway, that's your hands. Tonia, would love your insight with students and really having them incorporating their voice into the culture. Thank you, Kathleen.
I would say that it's actually wonderful to have those structures, as Kathleen mentioned. It's also just the little things every day. Visibility in the morning, making it a point of greeting children as they arrive, sauntering through the corridors spontaneously, having those little side chats, making sure that you're present in the moment when they come with their eyes wide and shiny to share an idea, and actually taking that to the next level and not losing that opportunity. Making my office space a space where it's not just where you go when there's a problem, but it's a space that you can come to during morning recess if you just want to have a quiet read and listen to some music, or you just want to have a chat with Ms. Potter-Mäl about your weekend or about where you're going next year on holiday with your family. Taking notice of what matters to the children and making sure that you bring it further. I think that's incredibly important. I think another aspect of student voice that is really critical is when things go wrong and when children are not getting along, to empower them, to not solve their problems, to equip them with strategies so that they feel the confidence to interact with students in different scenarios. Students will rise to the challenge if we show them that we trust them and that we believe in them, and that failure is actually a stepping stone to making better choices and to having a better experience at school and beyond school. I think another aspect of student voice that's really important is when you have visitors to the school, when you're representing the school in different ways, whether it's on campus or off campus, take those opportunities to get students involved, get them to brainstorm ideas, get them to suggest ideas to leadership, and not just, as you've mentioned, have one group that's representing all children. Some of the best ideas we've had in student leadership have not necessarily come from our student council. They've come from other children that have fed back to us. And then we're honoring that through our student council. So making sure that the way you're approaching student leadership is not narrow, so that every child in the school feels that they have a voice, and if they have something to share, that there's a forum for that, and that it's important to those who are listening.
I just want to really congratulate both of you, just from hearing that you're welcoming you use your office as not just a meeting place, but I'm going to say a gathering where it's just available. I mean, Tonia, what you said about someone just wanting to read with you, isn't that beautiful? And I know, Kathleen, one time I was having a meeting with Rachel and I said, Rachel, where are you? Like, your house is stunning. Like, I just saw this beautiful furnished room and I was like, wow. And she goes, no, I'm in Kathleen's office. I said, you can use her room for meetings? And she's like, yes. I was like, wow. So you already both are inspiring me just by what you're saying in that simple intentional task of keeping your office open and allowing it not to be a place of negative interaction.
Yeah, and I call my office the living room of the school.
Oh, I
And
love it.
it's open to anybody when it's ever open. It's never locked. I don't lock my office. And yeah, it was very intentional for me when I started in Helsinki that I removed any furniture that looked like office furniture, because to me often these are again signaling of power and hierarchy. To be behind some big desk says a lot versus, hey, it feels like you're just in this strange woman's home.
Well, everybody, I've hired Kathleen to come to my house and redesign my living room. So that's going to be another side job she's doing. So we're going to get everyone to come over. All right, when we're going to move on to, and please, I love, by the way, the comments in the chat about Pauline mentioned it's welcoming, a pleasure. And then we have Melanie saying, I love your idea of student leadership isn't narrowed. So you're really doing some inspiration. And I'm going to obviously just, share these quotes with everyone as well. So Tonia, I'm going to move to you in terms of the, I think we're going to move to conflict management, which is already, even now, I think regardless of our years of experience, when we have a difficult conversation, I don't know about you guys, but I still can't sleep the night before knowing it's going to happen. So I guess I'm going to start with you, Tonia, this time. What strategies would you recommend to your younger self in resolving conflict amongst, first, let's focus on staff, and what would be the skill set needed? So the strategies and also the skill set, do you think that you wish you knew 10, 15, 20 years ago?
Say adapt to learn and learn to adapt.
Oh, I love that.
And I think that is just something that comes with experience. And sometimes when, particularly in situations where there's change involved, that can generate vulnerabilities and fear and insecurities. And I think that if adaptation is viewed as something that's positive, as opposed to an obstacle, then it's easier to see that you're going through that process so that you can be a better learner. And then once you're learning, it then becomes easier to adapt to other situations. So that's something that has really resonated with me over time. I would say that listening first, then learning, paraphrasing is crucial, and checking for understanding, which is one way to make sure that the messages that are sent and received are the messages that are intended to be, because a lot can get lost in translation, even when you're speaking the very same language, especially when there are a lot of emotions involved in a conversation. So that can be quite helpful, I found. Being strategic with change and how it's managed. Realizing that a small step for one staff member, it can be a leap for another staff member in the same breath. And just take the time, help people understand the why. There's often a lot of focus on the what, but what I found is that when people understand the how and particularly the why, then you're able to help nudge them along as opposed to them feeling like they're being pulled along. And the nudging is much more inclusive as a method, as opposed to people feeling that they're being pulled or being asked to dive when what they really want to do first is dip their toe in the water. So those are some examples. I would say focus on the person first, not the problem. Avoid distractions in those situations and avoid being the savior. Avoid trying to jump in and solve problems. Try to equip people with different ways so that they can actually address situations with other colleagues, and embrace the fact that conflict is inevitable. It's always going to be there, so we might as well figure out creative and skillful ways to navigate it, and realize that we can come out even stronger together if we have that attitude going into a discussion about conflict. I would say that minimizing long email threads is a massive one. And just go and find a person if you can, and just have a face-to-face conversation. Again, it's harder to do that than sending out an email, but much more worth it in terms of building trust and relationships and repairing relationships when something has happened to compromise it. And I would say in conflict situations, when someone comes to you, ending the conversation with a positive comment about that person or about their contribution to the school makes a huge difference. Research has shown that people don't necessarily remember everything that happens in a conversation, but the last few minutes or the last chunk of the conversation is often what resonates or what sticks in their minds. So make sure that no matter how tense or difficult the situation is, that they're walking away feeling somewhat empowered and that they're valued within the community. Yeah.
Tonia, you remind me of that famous quote. It's not what you said or it's how you made me feel.
How you made me feel.
And I think there's going to be a group of t-shirts made now saying adapt to learn and learn to adapt, because that everyone was just writing that down. So hearing what we had from Tonia, Kathleen, what would you say? The skills, or adding on to what Tonia said, the strategies. You have a staff member, you're 33 years old, and all of a sudden they're coming in. How do you navigate those type of conflict management situations?
Yeah, I think Tonia's advice was critical, and I think much of it is very important. There's some things I would add to some of the topics she had. I think practically trying to assess what's happening at that moment, that presence that you talked earlier about with students as well. So, there's just different types of patterns of conflict that you have. One is an individual comes to you and they're just upset. They're upset because something happened, someone said something, or they're feeling upset about processes or changes or whatever. So to me, it's almost like a check, as if I am doing a scan on looking at someone's body language and how they're speaking about something, and assessing, are they in a highly heightened emotional state? And if they are, then the best thing, I think, oftentimes is kind of going into some of the techniques I've learned with cognitive coaching in the past, is just being a deep listener. And some of the things Tonia was already talking about how I'm just being with them. I'm not giving advice at that moment. I am solely focused on them. I am mimicking their body language. I'm trying to get them into a comfortable position, seated in a way where I'm with them, I'm hearing them, I'm saying back what they have said. And realizing when you have this sort of situation, and often as the head of school, they come to me as a last resort. So they often are heightened already, possibly. And so I just need to be a deep listener, and I'm not going to take any action in that meeting. I just need to hear it. I need to reflect back to them what they've said, and then give myself the breathing room to figure out, okay, how would this next meeting happen? Now that they've told me all this information, I need to slow this process down for them so that then we can talk on some kind of framework that might be about action steps or other things. Someone who's in a heightened emotional state cannot think logically about what we should be doing next, or how we would handle this, or what might the solution even be. It's just like, let that all out, receive all of that, and then give them a reassurance and the trust that you're going to meet with them again, and then we're gonna look at the next sort of step. So I think that's one pattern of conflict. Another common pattern I have with staff that you mentioned about staffing is that there's a conflict between two teachers. There may be co-teachers, there's teachers that work together in some regards, we've been doing a lot of work in this past year, especially on restorative practices, which I highly recommend. It's, getting your staff trained in restorative practices, I think makes sense. And it takes away, as Tonia said, takes you out of being the savior of some story that, I'm showing favoritism or whatever, but we're giving people empowerment between two people to hear each other well. And hopefully through their discussion of how the restorative practice works, that they have a chance to figure out what might be next steps for them. So I've facilitated a couple of very delicate restorative practice meetings where I said very little, but I'm just like setting the stage for people. And I've been really, I wish I would have known this years ago.
Can I ask you both a question? So we have restorative practice that you mentioned. Tonia, I think you talked about paraphrasing, both you have, that's we're talking about adaptive schools, 7 norms of collaboration. Are there other resources that you would recommend that helped you, either books or authors, when it comes to, because I think conflict management, regardless of where you are in a school, is ongoing. And we embrace cognitive conflict. When you have a meeting where everyone's quiet, then I'm thinking this isn't a good meeting. I'd rather have someone have the psychological safety to say, I'm not comfortable with that. What resources would you recommend in terms of, in addition to adaptive schools, restorative, any others that you would recommend? Either one, please share.
I would just add that it's very important that you know yourself, and this might be therapy for you, because whatever trauma, whatever experience you have, you take that into these situations, and you're often given signals again to others that you might not be conscious of, that you're blind to yourself of. And you need to take yourself out. So you have to find a way that you have removed yourself and you become more of an observer than a participant. And even when people are screaming at you or really highly agitated, you've got to be able to say, this is not about me, this is about something else. And I've got to be able to have the ability to stay in a mental state that is healthy for me and the people in the room. And that requires self-exploration, I think.
Beautifully. Thank you for that. Tonia, your thoughts, please.
Yes, that really resonates with me, Kathleen. Absolutely. I completely agree. And our school community, we're very familiar with restorative practices as well as the collaborative schools. I would say, to tag on to what Kathleen has mentioned, that knowing yourself and knowing to go to people, know your people. So this idea that sometimes your best resource is next door and in the humdrum and busyness of the day, that can get lost, particularly in situations where you're trying to make sense of what's going on. This idea of information gathering within your own community, it's very important that you're able to project to colleagues that you're fair So information gathering, making sure that you're in tune, making sure that you're consulting when it's appropriate in terms of distributive decision making as opposed to rash decision making. And I would say that this idea of modeling what it means to be solution oriented, the idea that you're not perfect as a human being and you don't expect anybody else to be, that perfection is actually overrated, and that we actually learn better when we do make mistakes and then dust ourselves up, pick ourselves up, and feel that sense of accomplishment from overcoming a hurdle. So I would say there are many rich resources right there in your own community. I am still very much learning that. It's my second year at my current school. And if we take more time to tap into that, I think that there are infinite advantages, not just in terms of continuing to cultivate stronger relationships, but in terms of our knowledge and our toolkit that we can pull from when we're engaging in situations that are challenging or situations of conflict.
I love that, reaching out to others. You know, I'm going to give Pauline O'Brien a shout out. And Pauline, let me know if I'm saying this incorrectly. She always talks about also having a board. Pauline, how do you say it? Those support people that you can go to?
Yeah, have your own board of trustees.
That's it.
Yep.
Say it, explain it what it was, Pauline, because I always quote you.
Thanks. So it's the idea of having mentors, sponsors, and a board of trustees. So mentors who are going to help you and, you know, support you in developing skills or, you know, pointing you in the right direction. Sponsors who are actually going to advocate for you, actually going to speak up for you, you know, make reference to you. You know, I know Kathleen, she is amazing. You should talk to her around this topic. I know Nancy, because she's an expert you should make that, you know, making those connections. And then the board of trustees is a combination of both of these that you should meet up with, you know, on a regular basis over a whole year to say, how am I doing? Just like, you know, a school board or an organizational board would meet with you to say, you know, how's the organization doing? How are you doing? How are you doing in your quest for professional learning, professional advancement, and also in potentially a job search?
I love that, Pauline. I've given you a lot of food for thought right now. Am I right? So it's time for you to get together. And as I mentioned, you're going to have a 10-minute break with small groups, no more than 4, 3 in a group. And we want you to think about, from this conversation, our focus was school culture, and it was also conflict management. What did you agree with? What did you argue with? What do you aspire to? And what assumptions you think were made? And if there's time, have another A. Okay, yes, you know what I'm going to do. Have to think of 5 words to now describe that conversation. This is for you to summarize. But you have to be concise. 5 words that would summarize. Use any adjective, noun, preposition, any part. Don't use an article. Articles are pretty boring. But how would you describe that conversation? Please type it in the chat, but don't press return yet. We always like to do a cascade. And while you're doing that, we'll be moving on to professional advancement. So, are we ready? Did you think of 5 words that summarizes that conversation? Yes, give me a thumbs up. I got it. Perfect. Everybody, 1, 2, 3. Put it in the chat, please. Let's hear inspirational, enriching, beautiful, welcoming, empowering. Oh my goodness, don't you wish every conversation was like this? So right now, this is your opportunity. Remember we talked about the heart? If there was somebody in your breakout room that you want to say, Greta, you were fabulous. I want to get to know you. Send her a private message and say, can I have your email? I would love to connect. You're going to start building your board of trustees as Pauline suggested. So if there is somebody out there, please connect with them. All right, our last only 8 minutes or so, but we want insight because both Kathleen and Tonia have this really looking at everybody in the room. We always think about perhaps our professional advancement. So Kathleen, how would you, and this would be, what steps would you tell your younger self to prioritize your career growth within an international school setting?
Yeah, I think always be ready to ready to try things in the context of your current job in a way that is going above and beyond and pushing boundaries to the possibilities. So, for example, when you're a classroom teacher, it's like, what other things are you doing to maybe enhance student learning? What are you exploring? What are you thinking about? What are you reading about? And then having the ability to trial things and getting feedback and being ready to share that with others. And also, I always say, be the person who raises their hand in the room to help out at times, and being that person, it could be like, I see something like maybe a member of leadership is saying, we're really struggling with, I don't know, classroom management, and maybe classroom management is something that you're really excelling at, and say, hey, listen, I'm really, this is something that comes maybe more naturally to me. I would love to, be a peer helper for that. Like raising your hand to saying, I have some skills in some way where I want to learn new skills, and just being open to new ideas and change. Change is going to come inevitably. And it's way more fun, I think, if you are participating in things that make you feel curious and excited and seen.
Just following, I love the idea of trying. A lot of this is also up to that individual, the intrinsic, to do the reading, to go for your passion, to not always expect the external to go to you, but you need to start looking at your own self-growth. Tonia, what would you add to that, please, in terms of looking at career development?
I would say work on being comfortable enough in your own skin and focus on maximizing your unique strengths within and beyond your organization. So acknowledge your limitations, work on getting those to a decent level, but don't spend excessive time on that. No one's the best at everything. So that's a big one. I would say stay true to your core beliefs. Try to make sure that you're aligned in terms of your core values, your beliefs in the school where you are. And if you're 3 steps ahead of your organization with what you feel is an exceptional idea, that may be challenging the status quo, and it's not accepted or it doesn't move forward right away, don't be discouraged. Reset, reflect, wait. Maybe it's the right idea in the wrong time. So try again. Dust yourself off and try again, as the song says. And sometimes it's just a matter of right idea, wrong moment. But sometimes when you dig deep, you might find that it's actually, it's just the space you're in is not the space where you'll be able to flourish, and to be honest with yourself about that so that you're not having that conversation many years later thinking I could have or I should have. That's really, really important. And I would say if you're uncomfortable with this idea of self-promotion, which I'm uncomfortable with that in general, it can be really awkward, but I would say be yourself, use the self-promotion sparingly, but know that it's an important skill. It's a competitive world out there. Even if you're not a competitive person, be in competition with yourself, because recruiters and interviewers need to know what your strengths are. They need to know how you stand out, and they need to see that you're confident to project that image. Yeah.
I love that. It's almost, I'm going to again quote my dear friend Pauline, the impact that you're making. So before we go, we have 3 minutes. So both Kathleen and Tonia, if I was to say, what are the 3 skills, and yes, I'm going to give a number on this, that you feel an individual should focus on to promote them, have professional advancement, what would be the 3 skills that you think they should focus on, thinking of today's international school community, the ecosystems that now exist globally? What are those 3 skills that you feel they should focus on as they try to have advancement professionally? So Tonia, what do you think?
I would say 3 skills. One would be, it's also a quality, but I think resilience is actually a skill, to be honest.
Mhm.
You're going to come across all types of experiences. Some will bring you very high joys, and there will be moments of low lows. But the idea is that you take it, you learn from it, and you use it as a stepping stone. Grit and resilience are really important. Another very important skill, I would say, is be knowledgeable and aware of hidden biases. So work to become more equipped at identifying that in terms of first with your own biases and then with others. And then learn some strategies of how to navigate those. And I would say the final one, the third skill, be humble yet bold. And I think
Lovely.
sometimes those seem like complete opposites, but I think you can be both, and you can find the balance in yourself to do that, and to believe in yourself and not let big egos interfere with your growth. Just to be aware that you don't have to lose yourself to achieve your goals. It might take a little longer, but to be yourself, to be comfortable in your own skin, and to use hard work and courage to achieve what you believe in, and don't let setbacks discourage you too much.
Oh, beautifully said. The humble is beautiful. And Kathleen, what would be your 3 skills that you would advise people to really focus on, to develop on for their professional growth or professional advancement?
I think you have to see yourself as a leader in whatever position you are in now. And to be a leader, to be a leader that you want to be, requires vulnerability. It requires inclusion and equitable practices, and it requires storytelling. And wherever you're at, I come from a background where my family was not in education and were factory workers, but I saw leadership in the smallest of details, and the love and kindness that, for example, my grandmother showed to others in her factory. And that to me is leadership. It's in these little moments, and people remember that, they recognize that, and they want you to move you forward in locations when they see that and they feel that from you.
And what a lovely 2 words that I think we're going to conclude this session with is love and kindness. Can you imagine if just that was how we just interacted? Just that was just the norm. You know, we have these random acts of kindness that we always hear about, but just having that love and kindness. Everyone, please, 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 I could we first have, and I would like everyone to unmute, because the insight that we were able to gain today from these 2 incredible educators in international world, and they were here for us. So first of all, unmute, and let's just give a really rowdy applause for them. I know that Kathleen and Tonia, they're just 2 people that are always available. So I'm going to already say it what I've been asking them, that if you need to reach out to them, I know they're both on LinkedIn, and that we put their contacts were on this promotion for this event. So we just want to say thank you for just some of I really want to say words of wisdom. And if you look at the chat, you know, big love from Shireen to Kathleen and Tonia. Thank you. Meaningful meeting today. How wonderful that we were privileged to have you here for an hour. And the most important is the takeaways you're getting. And you know what I think is even more important? How do you feel right now? Like, I just feel good. Like, I feel like there's a glow from the conversation today. And that's what I feel like is the purpose. People say that can't happen virtually. I say they're wrong. It can happen virtually. Itchy's given a big heart. So I'm sending my love from Luxembourg. As most people know, I do a really, there's a tradition I do because I like to think that we're in the same room together. So right now I have Cam on one side and my dear friend Ipti on the other, and I put my hands as if I can touch them. And I know, and I just want us to do a high five saying, thank you for being here on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3, high five. We did it, and I'm going to take your picture. So if you don't want your picture taken, you know I'll put this on LinkedIn. You shut your camera. Okay, so smile, 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 everyone. I just love it. I'm taking 2 because we have so many people. I have 2 rows. 1, 2, 3, smile, smile, smile. And the next page, I have to do both pages. Somebody complained once. Nancy, I was on the second page. You didn't take a picture. I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. So I'm so taking another picture. And I have another page as well. We have so many people here. It's great. Everybody, it's time to relax. For me, it is 6 o'clock in Luxembourg. It's time to just get offline. Kathleen and Tonia, thank you. That's all I can say. Emotionally, you're beautiful, beautiful. You're beautiful inside and out. Bye, everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nancy.